So thoughts, feelings, and sensations. I'd like us just to take a moment and explore the nature of the mind as it relates to thoughts, feelings, and sensations in a context that we can all, I think, or most of us, can readily grapple and understand. Which, since it might be pertinent to our day this morning so far, we'll look at, anybody here drive here this morning? Anybody here experience traffic this morning? Even though it's like 7 o'clock or 6:45 or 6:30? I grew up in Miami. I grew up in South Miami in Baptist Hospital, across from Baptist Hospital, Galloway and Sunset. It was totally different 50 years ago. How could things have changed so much? So we're in traffic. Anybody ever have it where somebody cut you off in traffic? Anybody ever cut? So you're cut off in traffic. Cut off in traffic. Right. Now, when something like that happens, we tend to have thoughts. Thoughts tend to arise. You might have been happily listening to the radio, you might have been happily doing whatever you were doing. Somebody cut you off, and all of a sudden, unbidden, thoughts begin to arise. What are some of those thoughts?
Jerk.
That arise. Jerk? Right. Is it, oh my gosh. Pardon me. For the sake of time. OMG. What else?
My first one.
So it's not just jerk. It's even more tantalizing than that. What else arises? What are some of the thoughts that arise in somebody cutting you off? This person who. What are some of the thoughts that might arise? What's one more thought that
Maybe
arises?
it scared you.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. Good. We'll get to scared. Excellent. You could say this is scary. This is scary, right? So we have these thoughts that arise. I can't believe, everybody say, I can't believe traffic. I can't believe that there's all this construction. I can't believe that this person just almost, okay, we have thoughts. They just arise. Then we have on the heels of those thoughts, although they probably all arise at the same time, but for the sake of we also have what? Feelings. And what are some of the feelings that arise? Take hold. Anger.
Frustration.
Fear.
Frustration.
Fear.
Fear. What else? Cut you off. Ugh. Anger, frustration, fear.
Surprise.
Surprise. We have these feelings that take hold, right? And then at the same time, running alongside these feelings, we have what? What do you think comes next?
Sensation.
Sensations. Well done. Sensations. And what would be some of the body sensations? What a jerk. Oh my gosh. Michael's especially explicative way of relating to that experience, which could be helpful, right? Fear, anger, frustration, surprise arises, and then the sensations in the body. What might some of those be?
Tense.
Clutching feeling.
The heart rate goes up, a clutching feeling.
Heavy breathing.
And the breathing becomes what? Shallower or fuller and more?
More heavy.
Right. A shallower, heavier breathing.
Or you just stop.
Hmm?
Or you just stop breathing sometimes.
Correct. That's right. That's right. So we have these thoughts, we have these feelings, we have these sensations in the body, which then leads us to, and as lawyers, this is especially important in terms of our lives as well as the work that we do with our clients. And then we have these reactions, which oftentimes are overreactions, right? And what are some of the, what a jerk, oh my gosh, feeling afraid, feeling angry, feeling fear, surprised, the heart rate goes up, we get tense. What are some of the overreactions that might arise in that moment?
You flip them off.
We flip them off. Oh,
Road rage.
that's right. The more extraordinary, right, the more extreme, the road rage. What else? Anybody? What do you ever do when somebody cuts you off and you're in your car? How do you get back at them?
Spiteful.
You can honk. What else?
You're spiteful, you cut them off.
You cut them off, right? Anybody ever have where you got your own little games that you put in? Right? Sort of, you get behind them and slow down. So like, what happened to that person? Or you speed up, or it's amazing, right? It's interesting. So we have these overreactions. Now, you cut them off. You honk at them, and then they have these thoughts. What are some of their thoughts when you cut them off or you honk at them?
What a jerk.
right? And then they have what? Feelings. What might be some of their feelings? Right? And then they have what? Sensations in the body. And then they have their little overreaction, which might be what? And we see how this cycle starts and goes. And we can go round and around and around. And you can think about the call you get from opposing counsel, what they say, how the thoughts, feelings, and sensations begin to take hold, how we might overreact, how that overreaction becomes there, how it goes round and around. The mindfulness insight is that at any moment, with that waking up, with that awareness, as you sort of indicated, right? You can think of the spiral when you were at the house with the movers. At any given moment, we have the opportunity to do what? To opt out. To say, I'm caught in this spiral. That's the first piece. I'm caught in the spiral. Somewhere in the landscape of the mind, something's happening. To be aware of it. Now, why do we honk? Is it actually constructive in the case that we're talking about here? Sometimes it can be. Right? No, we what? What happens when we honk? We feel better. What happens when we flip somebody off? We feel better. What happens when we get in front of them and do our little thing that throws them off? Right? We feel better. Think about the things that we do during the day, at home, at work, where what we're doing in response to what takes place is really geared towards feeling better as opposed to contributing in a constructive way to what's actually called for. Now, two things. One, what started it all? Somebody cut us off in traffic. An event. Someone cut us off in traffic. This is optional, right? Now, the feelings, they take hold. The fear might sort of engage because it was scary. But to get caught in it, to not realize we're caught in it, somebody cut us off in traffic. Somebody called and said they're denying our motion, or denying our sort of request for an extension. Okay, well that's what happened. Now what are we going to do about it? This? So a couple of things. One, it's like with every event, and life is a series of events. It's one event after the other after the other. It's a series of events, whether we realize it or not. It's like there's a little match that sort of follows every little event. And at some point in time, that match, when this kicks in, that match gets lit. So it's like there's this match following us around. When it's not what we want, not what we expect, not what we find pleasant, and we begin to resist it, as opposed to, somebody cut me off. And you know those moments where something happens that you're like, hey, that happens, cost of doing business. And those times when you're like, and other people, your cost of doing business becomes their thing, and their cost of doing business becomes your thing. We're all different. We're all in conditioned in different ways. But when we resist that experience, it's like it gets lit. And then the match begins to what? Burn. And then perhaps in ways to put out that uncomfortable, agitated feeling, we then engage in the overreaction, which is a short-term gain. For sure, it's a short-term benefit, not necessarily in the near term. When is it easiest to realize that this fire's going? When is it easiest to realize that we're caught in the spiral? Here or here? To realize that we're in the throes of it? Here, because we're feeling it. When is it harder to realize that this thing is happening and we're moving onto the spiral? Here, because it's just beginning. There's a saying, enlightenment comes when delusion is cut at the root. So the paradox is that this is where it's easier to realize, but harder to do something about it. And here it's harder to realize, but it'll be easier to do something about it. The mindfulness practice is very much about having us notice that we're on the spiral sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner, so that we can more skillfully do something about it. And it's the thoughts, the feelings, and the sensations that we're paying attention to. Because what if instead of wanting to do something out there and that person and that thing to fix what took place, we were able to turn our attention this way and notice. And through that noticing, change our relationship to this. So we're off the spiral. How might that make things different? So let us do an exercise, perhaps a little bit more informed as to why it is that we are interested in noticing the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. It's not some, if you will, touchy-feely, oh, I'll relax, and that's not it at all. Though that might be a nice aspect to it if it does lead us to feeling more at ease and at peace. But that's not what it's about. This is the data. This is the germane data that's arising in that moment. And we're not paying attention to it. We're going to feel better by doing something that has this go away or tone down, but really has nothing to do with what's actually called for. So let us attend to this, and then have more mastery over what to do next.